Welcome to our Small Business Challenges/Personal Solutions chapter. Here we discuss hats, habits, the cost-benefit analysis or solutions, the 5 P's, problems, and the 4 things needed to solve them: purpose, passion, perspective, and persistence, goals, and the game. We then wrap it up with some final thoughts. This chapter is about understanding the value and importance of working on your business instead of just in your business. Viewing your business as a machine gives insight or perspective. Are the parts working efficiently, producing positive or prosperous results consistently? One of the biggest challenges for small business owners is wearing the different hats, a metaphor for the different roles the owner must play. The bookkeeper, the finance manager, human resource manager, marketing manager, decision maker, problem solver, the maintenance and repair person, computer technician, office manager, field manager, compliance manager, and finally the worker who actually gets things done. Those tasks each day leave little time for attention to the long-term subtle health of the machine as a whole, to take care of the goose that lays the golden egg. Michael Gerber, author of The E-Myth, suggests that the successful business owner needs to balance 3 traits, or juggle 3 hats: the entrepreneur, the manager, the technician. The problem is, the most comfortable hat gets worn the most. He's the ruler, leaving the others in the closet because they're sometimes irritating, frustrating, and don't fit well. Therefore, that part of the machine lacks attention. We all have the 3 hats in the closet. The problem is that they actually clash with each other. The entrepreneur hat is the visionary, dreamer, or innovator, without structure, who dreams and lives in the future. The manager deals with reality, craves order and structure, and is very businesslike. The technician has to do the work of today, lives in the present, and gets frustrated with the other 2. A perfect balance is the foundation of small business success. It should be noted here that E-Myth, according to Mr. Gerber, is the entrepreneurial myth, which essentially says that most small businesses are not started by entrepreneurs, but by technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. The technician knows how to build a house, fix a car, take care of a patient, clip a poodle, but it takes much more to turn that into a successful business. In most small businesses, the technician is the ruler, with the other hats being worn occasionally, a major reason over the long term many small businesses fail. Understanding this is the first step in the right direction. The larger companies have people who specialize in these areas, making it difficult for small businesses to compete. If these larger companies and competition concern you, there's a great old story of David and Goliath, proving there's more going on here than we can physically see. There's a writing in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. You may want to hit the pause button and read the whole piece if you like. But life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster. But sooner or later, the one who wins is the one who thinks they can. The key is understanding or awareness that it's difficult to be an expert at all things. You have to balance your skills, desires, time, and other available resources. In Play to Win in Business and Life with Les Hewitt, the course helps guide the student to analyze the activities that energize, fulfill, and helps them lose track of time, compared to irritate, exhaust, or bore them, even if they do the activities successfully. He promotes the idea of specialization, like a quarterback who doesn't spend time learning or playing the other positions. He suggests to figure out what you enjoy and do it brilliantly, spending 80% of your time doing that. When we look back at Michael Gerber's 3 traits, we see a correlation. As an employee, freelance artist, or independent contractor, this may be fine, but as a business owner, it could be trouble. Having the ability to self-analyze and detach from your ownership role is a valuable attribute to possess. It helps one recognize the need or desire for guidance. A solution many small business people find is that working with a mentor, consultant, or independent business coach helps them compensate for the other hats that are left unworn, with a focus on getting the systems in place that help the machine produce successful results continually. If money is not available for such help, it may be time to put the creative hat on, literally setting time aside each week or month to focus on higher matters, whether it's asking the right questions through a brainstorming meeting, taking an online course, reading or studying some books mentioned in this presentation. All will provide energy, excitement, and rejuvenation. If you acknowledge setting time aside to help develop your business is a good idea, but you don't do it, would you consider that a good or bad decision? I know there are 100 things that need to be done. There always will be, and that's the point. According to Les Hewitt, consistent choices or decisions lay the foundation for your habits, and your habits play a major role in how your future unfolds. According to Napoleon Hill, in his timeless classic Think and Grow Rich, even the lack of decision is near the head of his list of 30 major causes of failure. That procrastination, the opposite of decision, is a common enemy which practically every man must conquer. Stephen Covey defines a habit as the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire, where knowledge is the what to do and why, the skill is the how to do, and desire is the motivation, want to do. In order to make anything a habit in our lives, we have to have all three. According to Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, both success and failure are largely the results of habit. He goes on to say, another weakness found in too many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impressions and beliefs. Some who will read this will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because their thought habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. Les Hewitt reminds us that our habits and belief systems are a product of our environment. We'll talk more about the importance and effects of belief systems in the goals section. Mr. Hill says, indecision, mentioned earlier, is a habit which usually begins in youth. The habit takes on permanence as the youth goes through graded school, high school, and even through college without definiteness of purpose. The major weakness of all educational systems is that they neither teach nor encourage the habit of definite decision. In a small business, the power of habits are amplified due to the nature of recurring functions of the business. Both books, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, named one of the 10 most influential management books ever by Forbes magazine, and The 8th Habit by Stephen Covey, are incredibly valuable, insightful, and highly recommended. All of the habits should be studied, including the ones discussed in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. But it's Mr. Covey's 4th habit of Think Win-Win that I want to highlight. This idea of thinking win-win seems to run contrary for most of us, being programmed since we were children that winning is everything and there must be a clear loser. According to this habit, if a win-win deal can't be reached, then it should be a no deal until a win-win solution can be found. Any other win-lose or lose-win is ineffective and ends up being a lose-lose in the long term. Win-win is a belief in the third alternative. It's not your way or my way. It's a better way, a higher way. Thinking win-win is the habit of effective interpersonal leadership. The principle of win-win is fundamental to success in all our interactions. According to Mr. Covey, Win-win is not a personality technique. It's a total paradigm of human interaction. It comes from a character of integrity, maturity, and the abundance mentality. I want to say that again. Win-win is not a personality technique. It's a total paradigm or way of looking at human interaction. It comes from a character of integrity, maturity, and the abundance mentality. It grows out of high-trust relationships. It's embodied in agreements that effectively clarify and manage expectations as well as accomplishments. It thrives in supportive systems. This idea is accomplished through understanding, and it helps create synergy. Habits 5 and 6. For this chapter alone, the book is worth it. In the book Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch, God tells the author that we're all one, that we're all connected, and most of our problems in this world stem from the idea that we're separate from each other. He tells the story of hitting someone on the head with a hammer is really like hitting yourself on the head, and it hurts, so why would you do that? When you hit someone on the head hard and long enough, sooner or later, they hit back, and it will hurt. This turns one from their perceived direction of prosperity now to a focus of retribution, energy now being spent in the wrong direction. Galatians 6, verse 7 says, "A man reaps what he sows." And Matthew chapter 7, verse 12 says, "So in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you." As you look around at the chaos, does it make sense that this one idea, this one habit of thinking win-win, although not easy, could solve so many problems? Many call this karma, one of the 7 spiritual laws of success by Deepak Chopra. There have been countless situations that I have been privy to where a business owner had promised a key employee or group of employees an opportunity to have ownership in the company through the owner's sale, a new division, restructuring, or retirement. But the deal never seems to happen. Whether intentional or not, over time the employee or employees get discouraged and scheme to break away, and in most cases, taking the owner's customers or clients with them. Think about the mental, physical, and financial costs for all involved when this happens. A win-win focus or mentality could have prospered both groups. As a business owner, you have a machine, an avenue, and leverage to create positive or negative for yourself and those around you. What's the answer when you don't know? I call this the cost benefit or solutions section. Many new business owners never realize how many decisions have to be made on a daily basis or really consider their future impact. The short answer to the question above, it's that choice where the benefits outweigh the costs. The cost-benefit analysis is simply listing the reasons for and against a particular choice or decision. The 6 Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono considers looking at the question or problems from different perspectives or different hats, as discussed earlier. PMI, plus, minus, and interesting, is another form of analysis created by Edward de Bono, consisting of a table or chart with 3 columns, adding another dynamic of interesting, which is considering the implications or outcomes of the choice. Having clearly defined goals and objectives are of major importance in the decision-making process. Analyzing whether a particular decision will move one closer or more distant to the set goals and objectives will help guide the decision process. Without this direction, the decisions really don't matter. But what if the issue is more difficult? NPR aired a discussion solving crossword puzzles. Listeners called in, many with the same response, that answers to the difficult questions would come to them during the night. In the morning, many times, they would know the answer, and the really difficult questions sometimes would take longer for the answers to show up. Those who studied the very successful people in history claim they effectively used the unconscious portion of their mind, such as Einstein, Wilbur Wright, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Theodore Roosevelt. Napoleon Hill, in Think and Grow Rich, called the subconscious mind the connecting link, his 11th step towards riches. According to Mr. Hill, there's plenty of evidence to support the belief that the subconscious mind is the connecting link between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. It is the intermediary through which one may draw upon the forces of infinite intelligence at will. It alone contains the secret process by which mental impulses are modified and changed into their spiritual equivalent. It alone is the medium through which prayer may be transmitted to the source capable of answering prayer. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 21, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" The verse says, you will hear the voice, but the question is, will you listen to it? In the book The Secret, incidentally, the word secret is mentioned over 50 times in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Rhonda Byrne says the mind is a transmission tower, constantly sending and receiving signals. Many of the books discussed in this presentation discuss meditation as a form of connection and peace. We believe strongly careful considerations of decision-making in the short term pay great dividends throughout the long term. In this section, we discuss the 5 P's: purpose, passion, perspective, and persistence. The 4 things one needs for the one you will have: problems. According to Dr. Scott Peck in his book, The Road Less Traveled, life is a series of problems. Discipline is the basic set of tools we require to solve life's problems. Without discipline, we can solve nothing. With total discipline, we can solve all problems. It's in this whole process of meeting and solving problems that life has its meaning. Problems call forth our courage and our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and our wisdom. It's only because of problems that we grow mentally and spiritually. It's for this reason that wise people learn not to dread, but actually to welcome problems, and to welcome the pain of problems. Deepak Chopra has this perspective. Every single problem that you have in your life is the seed of an opportunity for some greater benefit. Once you have that perception, you open up to a whole range of possibilities. And this keeps the mystery, the wonder, the excitement, the adventure alive. You can stay alert to opportunities by being grounded in the wisdom of uncertainty or the divine. When your preparedness meets opportunity, the solution will spontaneously appear. What comes out of that is often called good luck. Good luck is nothing but preparedness and opportunity coming together. When the two are mixed together, with an alert witnessing of the chaos, a solution emerges that will be of evolutionary benefit to you and to all those that you come in contact with. This is the perfect recipe for success, and it is based on the law of detachment, of which we'll talk more about in a few moments. Mr. Hill puts it this way in his book. Sometimes it appears that there is a hidden guide whose duty is to test men through all sorts of discouraging experiences. Those who pick themselves up after defeat and keep on trying arrive, and the world cries, "Bravo! I knew you could do it." The hidden guide lets no one enjoy great achievement without passing the persistence test. Those who can't take it simply don't make the grade. Those who can take it are bountifully rewarded for their persistence. They receive, as their compensation, whatever goal they are pursuing. Once we understand that we will have and can solve problems, the real work begins. In the books 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and The E-Myth, both authors discuss the idea of mentally attending your own funeral. As you watch from the corner of the room, what are the people saying about you? What do you want them to be saying? What character do you want them to remember you by? What regrets do you have? If you were telling the guests the story of your life, how would it go? You may want to pause this presentation and ponder these questions for a moment. Both authors suggest this imagery to help guide the student in creating purpose and direction. Mr. Gerber uses this to help you envision your primary aim with your business. Mr. Covey calls it Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Mr. Gerber states, once you recognize that the purpose of your life is not to serve your business, but the primary purpose of your business is to serve your life, you can then go to work on your business rather than in it, with the full understanding of why it is absolutely necessary for you to do so. This is important. I want to say it again. Once you recognize that the purpose of your life is not to serve your business, but the primary purpose of your business is to serve your life, you can then go to work on your business rather than in it, with the full understanding of why it is absolutely necessary for you to do so. Mr. Gerber goes on to state, your primary aim is the vision necessary to bring your business to life. It provides you with a purpose. It provides you with energy. It provides you with the grist for your day-to-day mill. Napoleon Hill says it this way, definiteness of purpose is the starting point from which one must begin. Definiteness of purpose takes on animation, life, and power when backed by a burning desire to translate that purpose into its material equivalent. It should also be noted that Mr. Hill devotes a whole lesson or chapter on a definite chief aim in his monumental work, The Law of Success, which preceded his book, Think and Grow Rich. Now, we're going to spend a few minutes discussing purpose at the personal level. In Deepak Chopra's book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, the 7th law is dharma, or purpose in life. Mr. Chopra says, we have taken manifestation in physical form to fulfill a purpose. Mr. Chopra breaks down this law into 3 components: that we're here to discover our true or higher self, our spiritual self. We are not human beings that have occasional spiritual experiences. It's the other way around. We are spiritual beings that have occasional human experiences. We're here to express our unique talents. This law says that every human being has one or more unique talents. This means that there's one thing you can do, and one way of doing it, that is better than anyone else on this entire planet. And when you're doing that one thing, you lose track of time. And the 3rd component is service to humanity, serving your fellow human beings, asking the question, how can I help? Mr. Chopra also discusses 3 commitments to maximizing this law. Commit to discovering your higher self, which is beyond the ego, through spiritual practice. Commit to discovering your unique talents. And commit to discovering how your unique talents can serve the needs of your fellow human beings. Ask the question, if money was no concern, and if you had all the time and the money in the world, what would you do? If you would still do what you currently do, then you are in Dharma, because you have a passion for what you do. You are expressing your unique talents. When your creative expressions match the needs of your fellow human beings, wealth will spontaneously flow from the unmanifest into the manifest, from the realm of the spirit to the world of form, and you will know true joy and the true meaning of success, the ecstasy and exaltation of your own spirit. According to the dictionary, passion is a strong and barely controllable emotion, a thing arousing enthusiasm, an intense desire or enthusiasm for something. Mr. Hill calls desire the starting point of all achievement, his first step toward riches. He devotes a whole chapter on this subject in Think and Grow Rich. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortunes first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning before they acquired money. There is one quality which one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with what tools he possessed, without waiting for opportunity to favor him, and now evidence of his dream belts the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived, because he was not afraid to back his dreams. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dream into action, and despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slaves, put his dream into action, and barely missed living to see a united North and South translate his dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world that they dreamed soundly. Perspective comes from the Latin word perspicere, to see through, looking at a subject from a different angle or viewpoint, such as a 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point or more perspective. Currently, we're looking at the outside in, but what if we're the box, a multi-dimensional container, inside looking out? How does that change the view or perspective? In Mr. Covey's book, he says before we can understand the 7 habits, we must understand our own paradigms and how to make a paradigm shift. A paradigm is a model, theory, or perception, and in a general sense, it's a way of looking at things or the world. According to Mr. Covey, the map is not the territory. A map is simply an explanation of certain aspects of the territory, and that's exactly what a paradigm is. Principles or truth is the territory. Our subjective values are the map. He likens the paradigm shift to the aha moment. The phrase, think outside the box, helps summarize this idea of perspective. In the book NLP, The New Technology of Achievement, the author states that by simply reading this book, you can learn how to eliminate unwanted habits, transform negative emotions into positive feelings, improve self-image and self-esteem, and become more the person you want to be. In essence, they teach you how to do a paradigm shift. NLP is the acronym for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. In a quote from Chapter 1, the accounts of personal change you will read in these chapters happen to actual individuals. In many cases, their changes took place in the same amount of time it will take you to read about them. These transformations, which include changing fear into confidence, despair into desire, and worry over the past into goal-oriented actions, are the result of specific and learnable techniques. I want to point out the phrase in the same amount of time it will take you to read about them. It's amazing how fast the change can take place, and for this very phrase, I highly recommend reading this book. The book has many exercises or thought experiments to prove how it works. Much of this information centers around a word called detachment, which we have found in the grand scheme of things a very valuable word. In Deepak Chopra's book, detachment is his 6th of the 7 spiritual laws of success. The law of detachment, according to Mr. Chopra, says that in order to acquire anything in the physical universe, you have to relinquish your attachment to it. This doesn't mean you give up the intention to create your desire. You don't give up the intention, and you don't give up the desire. You give up your attachment to the result. You still have the intention of going in a certain direction. You still have a goal. However, between point A and point B, there are infinite possibilities. With uncertainty factored in, I would replace the word uncertainty with divine, the universe, or God. You might change direction in any moment if you find a higher ideal, or if you find something more exciting. You are less likely to force solutions on problems, which enables you to stay alert to opportunities. Mr. Chopra says, cars, houses, clothes, the banknotes are all symbols, and they are transitory. They come and go, and chasing symbols is like settling for the map instead of the territory. It creates anxiety. It ends up making you feel hollow and empty inside because you exchange yourself for the symbols of yourself. The second of the 4 Noble Truths from Buddhism says, the origin of suffering is attachment to transient things and the ignorance thereof. Ignorance is the lack of understanding of how our mind is attached to impermanent things. The reasons for suffering, in short, is craving and clinging. Because the objects of our attachment are transient, their loss is inevitable. Thus, suffering will necessarily follow. I would sum up this detachment idea as stepping up to the plate with the intent to hit one out of the park. It's the grand vision, the challenge, the work, the creation that's exciting. If you miss the mark, your world doesn't collapse. You're not tied to the result. It doesn't mean you don't try again until you succeed or move on to a greater challenge. It means your world doesn't collapse. It's not tied to your ego. Mr. Chopra says, only from detached involvement can one have joy and laughter. I think the story of John D. Rockefeller is a perfect example of detachment. Mr. Rockefeller spent his first half of his life making money and the last half giving it away. Mr. Hill calls persistence his 8th step towards riches and a central factor in the procedure of transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent. The basis of persistence is the power of will. He goes on to say, the majority of people are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. A few carry on despite all opposition until they attain their goal. These are the Fords, Carnegies, Rockefellers, and Edisons. With persistence will come success. Some men who have accumulated great fortunes did so because of necessity. They developed the habit of persistence because they were so closely driven by circumstances that they had to become persistent. Mr. Hill gives us 4 simple steps which lead to the habit of persistence. They call for no great amount of intelligence, no particular amount of education, and but little time or effort. The steps are a definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment, a definite plan expressed in continuous action, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. According to Mr. Hill, These 4 steps are essential for success in all walks of life, are the steps by which one may control one's economic destiny. These steps lead to freedom and independence of thought. They lead to riches in small or great quantities. They lead the way to power, fame, and worldly recognition. They guarantee favorable breaks. They convert dreams into physical realities and lead to the mastery of fear, discouragement, and indifference. A goal, by our simple definition, is a place that you are not yet. This section is to help you answer 3 questions. Where are you at? Where are you going? How are you going to get there? In Conversations with God, God tells the author, we live in a world of duality or polarities, that we would not know or experience hot if there wasn't cold. The same with light and darkness, good and evil, winning and losing, love and hate, faith and fear. Are things possible or impossible? Do you believe or doubt? Do you talk health or sickness, positive or negative? The question becomes, where are you at? Who runs your show? Which voice inside do you listen to? A clue is to listen to the words you say. I can't do it, or I think I can. I'm too old. I'm not smart enough. I'm going to strike out. Luke chapter 6, verse 45 says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Mr. Hill says in Think and Grow Rich, positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind at the same time. One or the other must dominate. It is your responsibility to make sure that positive emotions constitute dominating influences of your mind. Here the law of habit will come to your aid. Form the habit of applying and using the positive emotions. Eventually, they will dominate your mind so completely that the negatives cannot enter it. Many years ago, I sat for the CPA exam, lasting 2.5 days and divided into 4 sections. A minimum score of 50 was needed on all the sections and 75% needed to pass any section. You could retake the test until all the parts were passed in a 2-year window, but the test was only offered twice a year at a considerable cost. To prepare, I took the Becker CPA review course. At the beginning and ending of each class session, the instructor would project testimonials on the overhead from prior successful students and actually read them out loud. 2 weeks before the exam, I began to doubt that I could pass all 4 sections in the first sitting. Very few accomplished this, and given my prior history, the odds weren't in my favor. During the last few weeks of the course, more time was spent reading testimonials before and after the study session, which I thought was wasting our study time. But the instructor kept putting the "you can do it" testimonials on the overhead. Those from older students, married students with families, and those who had been away from college for years were writing in thanking Becker for helping them believe, asking him to pass this on to his students. If you've done the work, you can do it. So the last week I made a decision and committed to do the best I could on all 4 sessions, not just focusing on 2 or 3. 3 months later, as I received the results, to my amazement, I enjoyed the thrill of victory. I had passed all 4 parts, and looking back, although I had done the work, it was those positive voices, those testimonials, that lifted me up and through. Now it was my turn to write my testimonial. If I can do it, anyone can, but you have to believe and do the work. In the words of my favorite mentor, you better talk to that mountain because you know the mountain is going to be talking to you. There's a great story in Matthew chapter 14 where Jesus walked on the water to get to the boat his disciples were in. When they saw him, they were terrified, thinking it was a ghost. Jesus tells them to take courage and don't be afraid. His disciple Peter says, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." The story goes that Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and went towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind and the waves, he became afraid and began to sink. Then Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," Jesus said, "why did you doubt?" Napoleon Hill calls autosuggestion the medium of influencing the subconscious mind, his third step towards riches. Autosuggestion is a term which applies to all suggestions and all self-administered stimuli which reach one's mind through the five senses. Stated in another way, autosuggestion is self-suggestion. No thought, whether it be negative or positive, can enter the subconscious mind without the aid of the principle of autosuggestion, with the exception of thoughts picked up from the ether, the upper regions or space around us. Some call it heaven. If we translate the word autosuggestion or self-suggestion with self-directed thinking and reread Mr. Hill's writing, self-directed thinking is a term which applies to all suggestions and all self-administered stimuli which reach one's mind through the five senses. No thought, whether it be negative or positive, can enter the subconscious mind without the aid of the principle of self-directed thinking, with the exception of thoughts picked up from the ether. Many of the books discussed in this section say virtually the same thing as Mr. Hill. You have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts. This is the most significant and inspiring of all facts known to man. It reflects man's divine nature. In The Magic of Thinking Big, Dr. David J. Schwartz says the size of our accomplishments has to do with the size of our thinking, or self-directed thinking, and that self-deprecation, the tendency to run ourselves down or sell ourselves short, is one of the human's greatest weaknesses. Many choose mediocrity by refusing to believe in their own ability and self-worth. Dr. Schwartz has many exercises in his book to prove to the reader they can accomplish more than they realize. According to Dr. Schwartz, it's not important where you're at or where you were, but where you desire to go. Visualize this place. Think about it. Can you see it? Many of the authors noted throughout this chapter concurred that thoughts are things, energy, vibrations. According to Napoleon Hill, everything that man creates begins in the form of a thought impulse. Man can create nothing which he does not first conceive in thought. Stephen Covey says it this way: all things are created twice. There's a mental or first creation and a physical or second creation to all things. In Creative Visualizations by Shakti Gawain, practicing visualization is about understanding the link between the imagination and reality and the laws that govern them. You start by thinking about the things that you want in your life. Although things are nice, the true purpose of this, according to Shakti, is to drill down from your normal reactive self to your higher self. This resonates with our earlier discussion of Deepak Chopra's seventh law of Dharma, or purpose, that we came here to discover our higher self and to serve humanity with our unique talents. Mr. Covey talks about a new level of thinking, a principle-centered, character-based, inside-out approach to effectiveness, starting first with the self, your character, paradigms, and motives. In The Secret, it says that you can have anything that you want: the car, the boat, the home. All of these things are wonderful, but consider if this is an outside-in approach. Mr. Covey, in his discussion, talks about the variety of people he has worked with in the past, and with all of his experience, he never saw lasting solutions to problems or lasting happiness and success that came from the outside in. So as you consider your destination, goals, and objectives, we recommend the balanced approach: physical health, spiritual health, and financial health. Physical, taking care of yourself, diet, exercise, rest, weight goal, etc. Spiritual, consider your relationships with everything, the universe, the environment, those around you, and yourself. Financial, these are the toys, cars, homes, the money, the vacations, the gifts to help you enjoy this journey. If this balanced approach seems an error to you, consider the successful entertainers, athletes, and schemers who lived the high life, thinking they were heading in one direction, only to find themselves in a bad place, extinguished from a drug overdose, suicide, or in jail. It's not real difficult to see they didn't have or maintain a balanced approach. As you consider your goals and objectives, I love what The Secret calls it, your vision board. It's important to write down your goals, but the vision or picture has stronger meaning or vibrations. This vision board can be done at the individual level, business level, or a mixture of both. There are several points to consider when listing your goals or creating your vision board. They need to be specific and measurable. They need to be flexible, providing freedom for expansion. They must be exciting and challenging. They must be in alignment with your values. They must be realistic. Although it's been said, there are no unrealistic goals, just unrealistic time frames. They must include contribution, serving humanity. So now that you've considered where you're at, where you want to go, with the final question being, how are you going to get there? One of the best analogies I've heard is from Jack Canfield in The Secret, also author of The Success Principles. If you're in New York and want to get to LA, you have to consider your options: walk, drive, fly, etc., and your resources, money, contacts, but the most important is your belief that it's possible. You don't need to see LA from New York. All you need is your headlights to show you the next 200 feet in front of you and trust that you will be shown the way. Bob Proctor says in The Secret, if you do just a little research, it's going to become evident to you that anyone who ever accomplished anything did not know how they were going to do it. They only knew they were going to do it. Being grounded in logic and common sense, my question was always, how can one set this huge goal and expect to get there when there are so many things out of our control? Why bother? We should just work hard and hope for the best. What I've come to learn, it's not logical or common at all. And this is where it gets very interesting. When you become focused and determined, it seems that something happens and things seem to shift. Some call it the universe or the divine. Maybe it's the hidden guide that Mr. Hill talks about, who realizes one's determination and therefore decides to move on to annoy someone else who isn't so determined. Whoever or whatever one calls it, many have experienced it. Several years ago, I stumbled across Harv Eker's story, author of Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Mr. Eker, in his younger years, was almost obsessed with becoming a success. He read all the books, listened to the tapes, attended the seminars, but still failed several times, having to move back home with his parents 3 times. He says in his book, I heard of this thing called profit, I just never saw any of it. A family friend had given him an insight that, although it's not an exact science, but for the most part, rich people think a certain way and poor people think a completely different way. And those ways of thinking determine their actions and therefore determine their results. Harv considered the advice and began to study the psychology of wealth creation and success. He learned that successful people don't hope for the best. They make a commitment, a mental determination to succeed. He soon after put his new knowledge to the test, invested a borrowed $2,000 in a retail fitness store, and committed to not leaving the business until he was worth $1 million or more. He mentions this mindset was radically different than previous efforts. The business was so successful that he opened 10 stores in 2.5 years, then sold half the company's shares to a Fortune 500 company for $1.6 million. There's a new game in town, a new challenge, more difficult to be successful at, but a greater thrill of victory. It's a game with a win-win outcome. According to Mr. Gerber, the challenge for the business owner is to create the game. This game creates the structure in which the players can express and test themselves and be tested within the context of the rules. The game is intertwined throughout your business. Does your game have order? Do the players know the rules? Have they been communicated? It has to make sense, have logic, and at times be fun. It needs to have specific ways of winning without ending. It has to be real, a game you as the owner are willing to play. The degree you get your people to do what you want is the degree you get your people to buy into the game. Mr. Gerber calls it the franchise game. Your business should be a prototype for many more just like it. Some of you, after listening to this presentation, may still not have the wherewithal to dream of great success, but I would challenge you, as one did to me, play the game, live life, dream big, and lighten up. And if you believe money is evil or bad, then get money and give it away to those who are not. Remember, money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of money. Mr. Rockefeller's game was to become rich the first half and give it away the second. Maybe your game is to create your business, sell it, and do it again. As we wrap up this presentation, the information provided in this chapter with these books is only the tip of the iceberg, intended to arouse your curiosity. If it has not yet become evident, there are two things going on here: you and your business. For a focus of your business, the first and foremost book to read, then study, is The E-Myth Revisited. The audio version is just less than 2 hours in length. The next suggestion would be Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, of which we have included a PDF version on this disc for you to print and read. And in the words of Mr. Hill, this book alone could be worth $1 million to you. The next would be The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Another book we did not mention in this presentation, but included on this disc in PDF, is Prosperity by Charles Fillmore, a metaphysical book written in the heights of the Depression. Believing in the abundance mindset, the author never copyrighted the book, so it could be made free to everyone. Visit our webpage for quick links to access the books and videos. I don't think anyone realizes how truly valuable time is more than a small business owner. All of our recommendations are focused and based on freeing one from the lack of time prison, even if it's in the long run. Years ago, when the book Think and Grow Rich was recommended, my first thought was that it sounds ridiculous. Being a product of my environment, I was taught working hard was the way to prosperity. But through observation, there had to be something more. Mr. Hill analyzed over a 20-year period hundreds of well-known men whom admitted they accumulated their fortunes to the aid of the Carnegie Secret. This secret had a part in the more contemporary book, The Secret, by Rhonda Byrne, another book highly recommended. It should be noted here that Think and Grow Rich was written in the 1930s, an era of what Stephen Covey found during the research for his book, part of the first 150 years of our country, which was based or founded on the character ethic, with such things like integrity, humility, fidelity, temperance, courage, justice, patience, industry, simplicity, modesty, and the golden rule. The book Think and Grow Rich consists of 13 steps toward riches, with the last step called the Sixth Sense, through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. Mr. Hill continues, through the aid of the sixth sense, you will be warned of impending dangers in time to avoid them, and notified of opportunities in time to embrace them. There comes to your aid and to your bidding, with the development of the sixth sense, a guardian angel who will open to you at all times the door to the temple of wisdom. Whether or not this is a statement of truth, you will never know except by following the instructions described in the pages of this book, or some similar method of procedure. In Mr. Hill's chapter, he goes on to discuss his imaginary council meetings with 9 men whose lives and life works had been most impressive to him. These were Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, and Carnegie. This group he called his invisible counselors. Due to the similarities of that time in history, the 1930s, and our current time some 80 years later, I want to include Mr. Hill's experience in his words. These imaginary council meetings became so realistic that I became fearful of their consequences and discontinued them for several months. The experiences were so uncanny, I was afraid if I continued them, I would lose sight of the fact that the meetings were purely experiences of my imagination. Some 6 months after I had discontinued the practice, I was awakened one night, or thought I was, when I saw Lincoln standing at my bedside. He said, "The world will soon need your services. It is about to undergo a period of chaos, which will cause men and women to lose faith and become panic-stricken. Go ahead with your work and complete your philosophy. This is your mission in life. If you neglect it for any cause whatsoever, you will be reduced to a primal state and be compelled to retrace the cycles through which you have passed during thousands of years." I was unable to tell the following morning whether I had dreamed of this or had actually been awake, and I have never since found out which it was, but I do know that the dream, if it were a dream, was so vivid in my mind the next day that I resumed my meetings the following night. At our next meeting, the members of my cabinet all filed into the room together and stood at their accustomed places at the council table, while Lincoln raised a glass and said, "Gentlemen, let us drink a toast to a friend who has returned to the fold." Mr. Hill goes on to say, "This is the first time that I had the courage to mention this. Heretofore I have remained quiet on the subject because I knew, from my own attitude in connection with such matters, that I would be misunderstood if I described my unusual experience. I have been emboldened now to reduce my experience to the printed page, because I am now less concerned about what they say than I was in the years that have passed. One of the blessings of maturity is that it sometimes brings one greater courage to be truthful, regardless of what those who do not understand may think or say. Lest I be misunderstood, I wish here to state most emphatically that I still regard my cabinet meetings as being purely imaginary, but I feel entitled to suggest that, while the members of my cabinet may be purely fictional and the meetings existent only in my own imagination, they have led me into glorious paths of adventure, rekindled an appreciation of true greatness, encouraged creative endeavor, and emboldened the expression of honest thought." As I have reread these books over the years, through a more spiritual lens, I have come to agree with Rob Bell in his presentation of Everything is Spiritual.
Maybe you've heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm just not into spiritual things." Are you a human being? Yeah, too late. The issue is not whether you're a spiritual being or you have a spirituality. The issue is whether your eyes are open and you're aware of it. You cannot deny what is central to your makeup as a human being. In the Hebrew language, there is no word for spiritual. If you would have said to Jesus, "Jesus, how is your spiritual life?" What? What do you mean? Because to label one area spiritual is to label other areas not spiritual. It's absolutely foreign to the world of the Scriptures. It's absolutely foreign to the worldview of Jesus. The assumption is that you are a fusion of two realms, and a human being occupies a totally unique place in the entire universe. How you handle your money, how you handle relationships, sexuality, forgiveness, reconciliation, business, school, work, play, recreation. Everything we do as an integrated being, 100% physical, 100% spiritual. These first Christians latched onto this right away. Whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it in the name of Jesus Christ. What were they saying? Every act is a spiritual act. It's whether or not you're aware of the implications of what you're doing.
As we consider our belief systems and the goals we place before us, the problems and the purpose, passion, perspective, and persistence we need to resolve them, the analysis and solutions we're in need of, the habits that we have and need, and the hats we must and do wear. Consider this, that we're all a player in the game, whether we realize it or not. And the beauty is, it's your game.